Hi everyone, I'm John Nepper, the Trust and Connection Maximizer. Welcome to another episode of Two Talk Smart, where I am interviewing the movers and shakers, the heavy hitters of the Wisconsin chapter of the National Speakers Association. My guests will share their ideas and strategies about growing a successful speaking business and having some fun doing it. Topics will fit into the National Speakers Association 4 E's of the speaking business, including enterprise, expertise, eloquence, and ethics. My guest on this episode of Two Talk Smart is Mike Domritz. You may have seen Mike quoted in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, or maybe you've seen him as a featured expert on a Dateline NBC special. For 3 decades, Mike has been one of the most sought-after speakers in the world for addressing sexual consent, respect, and reducing sexual violence. As the founder of the Center for Respect, his clients include the U.S. military, corporations, educational institutions, and some of the country's most prestigious schools. During the first 12 months of COVID, when speaking shut down, Mike continued to stay busy on stages live virtually throughout the world, having given over 100 paid talks. As the founder of the Center for Respect, a Hall of Fame speaker and coach, Mike coaches impact-driven entrepreneurs who want to be more amazing from the stage. Mike quickly helps influencers discover their hidden gifts for catapulting their influence on stages, live, virtual, and on-site. Unlike many coaches who teach formulaic, cookie-cutter systems that make everyone sound alike, Mike ensures your uniqueness shines when you work with him. Entrepreneurs love how Mike amplifies and ignites their stories and their message, all while drawing from their best personal qualities. Hello everyone, I'm John Nepper. I am the Trust and Connection Maximizer. I am speaking with Mike Domritz today from the National Speakers Association Wisconsin chapter. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, I'm glad to have you here. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Mike, you've been in the Speakers Association for how long?
I joined NSA in 2002, so we are on exactly 20 years.
20 years. And how long have you been speaking professionally?
I started speaking a little over 30 years ago. I was 21 at the time when I first started, and it was a rough road because I was on a very sensitive topic around consent and sexual assault. At a time, schools and communities were not talking about that openly, and I looked like I was 15 when I was 21. So the barriers were many, many, and what happened was I had a bit of a roller coaster the first 10, 12 years, and to the point I had to step away because I just couldn't get into places to speak. And then in 2002, NSA Wisconsin's Patty Hendrickson was the youth chair of the NSA convention. And I was going to that convention. That was going to be my very first convention ever in Orlando, Florida. And she said, Mike, since you're going, would you speak to the youth and give one of your programs on dating relationships? And that speech would springboard me back to full-time speaking. 2 weeks later, I sold the business I owned, quickly almost went bankrupt. Thankfully, it's exactly what I need to do to go all in on this. And I just listened to what everybody at the convention told me to do, and I did it for a year. And everything started to really take off then. So that was 2002 that I've been full-time, both in NSA as a member and as a speaker full-time.
You are a CSP in the National Speakers Association. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes, Certified Speaking Professional. So it's the highest earned designation in the speaking industry. And earned is the key word there because you have full ability to have control over whether you receive that certification or not. It's not an award or a recognition. It is a designation. So what that means is that you can show, and there are very standard setup qualifications for it, that your clients can show your level of quality consistently over time. So there are surveys you have to submit. You have to have a lot of clients' feedback. You have to show that you've done a certain number of speeches over a certain number of years to show that you have a consistent track record of excellence during that. You also submit a full speech to be evaluated by multiple members that are already CSPs who sit there and go, is this CSP quality? So somebody could have clients that say, oh, we love them. And then they look at the video and go, that's a low standard those clients have. This is not the level of excellence that we're talking about for a designation in our industry of excellence. And somebody can actually, unfortunately, not be chosen and not receive the designation because they didn't earn it based on the quality of performance. So it's really powerful And think of it this way: you have the CPA, and you have other awards. Like for accountants, you have CPA, and then you have it for others. They have to show they have enough knowledge to start really doing what they want to do full time. This award shows you have enough knowledge and history and experience of excellence over time. So it means a lot.
How long did it take you to get your CSP?
So when I was applying back in the day, you had to be a member for 5 years. So I was paying attention during those 5 years. So at my 5-year mark, I applied and received my CSP.
Okay. And then you also have a few other letters in your after your name there, the CPAE, and you just received that award. Can you tell us what that award is?
Yeah, that's my friend right there. That's what that is. So that is the Council of Peers Award for Excellence. That is NSA's, the National Speaker Association's Hall of Fame. And that is a recognition versus a designation. And so that means that members of the Hall of Fame have chosen that you represent the level of excellence that is worthy of being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And they do that on multiple criteria, such as delivery, materials, your presentation. They look at 4 major categories of business and see if you excel in all of them, not in one of them, in all of them. And if you do, then at that point, you're in a selection process, and they choose typically around 5 a year to go be inducted into the Hall of Fame. There have been years where there's less. There have been years where there's more, but typically right around 5 people are inducted each year.
And this year you received your CPAE, and congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What's exciting for me is, we'll slide that out there. What's exciting for me is that I'm representing Wisconsin, and that's what means a lot to me. So this is our first member from Wisconsin in 30 years. And so I look forward to more and more Wisconsin people joining me in that. And the last 2 were Dan Burse and Mike McKinley, and they went in the same year. So that's pretty cool, in 1992. So we are exactly 30 years out, which means we need to get some momentum here, because there's some amazing speakers in Wisconsin that we'd love to see joining that.
Yeah, there really are. We have kind of a powerhouse chapter with a lot of speakers who are building successful businesses. Mike, what is your backstory? How did you get into this whole thing?
Yeah, I did not grow up planning to be a speaker. And most speakers I know did not plan on being a speaker when they grew up. Something came along that presented its opportunity or was a mission. For me, personal mission. I grew up studying theater. I was going to be an actor, and that was my focus until I received a phone call in college that the youngest of my older sisters had been raped. And suddenly my life was rocked, John. I didn't know how to move forward. I was lost. I was confused. I was hurt. I was angry. And I would transfer schools, actually, because I was so lost, to be close to home, near my sister during the trial. And during that time, I was an athlete on campus, and they mandated we go see the speaker. And this speaker was on consent and sexual violence. And I sat there and went, wait a second, we can talk about this? I want to talk about this. So I went to the speaker. His name was Joseph Weinberg. And I said, I want to speak on this. And he said, well, if you really do, come by my place. And I got lucky. He was an hour away. So I went to his place, and he goes, almost no one ever shows up. And he just gave me all this information, of which I wrote my first speech from. All right. And so from there, I went to my local high school I graduated from, went to a teacher I had as a teacher, Judy Farrell, and I still stay in touch with her to this day. She said, Mike, I trust you. Speak to my class. And when I was done, she said, Mike, this is what you should be doing. And so that's what I started doing. I started trying to reach out to schools and then speaking on the classrooms on the campus I was at. So I was doing universities, high schools, and middle schools. And that's where I focused. However, I was 21 and I looked 15, and that's no exaggeration to that. And it was a topic schools were not ready to address. So I had a battle. I had a challenge that I ended up stepping away. For the first 10, 12 years, it was just up and down. I had to step away until I found NSA in 2002. And that would change my career and my life forever. I was going to go to my very first convention. I joined NSA Wisconsin. They told me about the convention. And so I was going to Orlando. And a month before, Patty Hendrickson pulled me aside, the youth chair of the conference, NSA Wisconsin member, and said, Mike, would you give your program to the youth of NSA? I was so excited. I was scared to death because I also realized, wait a second, I'm about to talk to the kids of the world's greatest speakers at a conference I've never attended, right? So I got all nervous. When it was all done, though, Patty pulled me aside and said, Mike, the world's changed in the last 10 years. It's looking for you. It's ready for your message. And I so believed in Patty's words that I sold my business that I owned quickly, almost went bankrupt, and realized this is where I belong. And so that desperation was the greatest motivation to go all in that year and do whatever I learned at NSA. And that's what I did. I did what the people of NSA told me to do for the next year. Suddenly I was reaching more people, speaking more, and that's where it started to take off.
Right. And would you say in your business, you create a culture of respect? I mean, you have the center for respect. Is that the thrust of your message?
The thrust of my message is that every choice we make, whether it's words or actions, should be founded in a place of respect. Now, no one is perfect out there. We're all human. So it's not that I'm going to always be 100% perfect in that, but I'm going to do my best to do that. And particularly in two realms, sexual intimacy, that's really where I began this work in that conversation, and then in corporate culture. So what a lot of corporate culture does is it says, respect is the ultimate goal. And the fact is, John, respect is the bare minimum requirement. It's not the standard of excellence. So we help companies shift that mindset to not saying respect is the ultimate. No, just that's the ground floor beginning. Now, what can you achieve beyond that? And that takes them to much stronger places of employee retention, productivity, so many more benefits, including profitability. Now, on the sexual intimacy, we're working there to reduce sexual assault, sexual violence by teaching healthy relationship and healthy intimacy decision-making. And that's all founded in respect.
That's a really great point about having a foundation of respect. I can see where people say, oh, yeah, this is our level. We want to have people have a culture of respect. But I like what you're saying about building, like that's the foundation to build so much more above that. How has your message changed over the years, Mike?
Well, one of them is that whole corporate existence didn't exist. So I was purely dealing with sexual intimacy and relationships for almost 20 years. And then what happened is a few years ago, some people in the corporate world said, hey, you're doing this for colleges, you're doing this for high schools, you're doing this for the US military all over the world. And that's the part we didn't talk about. That's the part that really expanded. In 2005, the military came to me and said, hey, you're doing this for college students. You think you could do this for us? And suddenly we really expanded in the US military. So my clients were almost at one point, 40% university, 40% military, 20% high school, middle school. Now those numbers have changed dramatically. High school and middle school have really taken off. But then what people said is, hey, you're in all these places. Do you think you could do that for our company? Except instead of in the sexual space, do you think you could do that in just the workplace, in interpersonal relationships, interpersonal relationships? Could you do that in all those capacities? And we created a formula. And so I created a model called the 9 daily displays of disrespect that all of us engage in, John. So it wasn't about feeling attacked if you were in the room. It's like, oh, we all do this. All right, well, what if we could switch those to the 9 daily choices for respect? And that's the program the company's hiring me for.
You know, Mike, you and I had a little conversation before we started about how you were speaking to audiences about what they shouldn't do and how that flipped. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, when I first started speaking, I was an angry brother. And I mean, that's exactly where my mindset was. I was upset that this happened to my sister. So I was going to the audience, like, can you believe this? And we need to stop this. And it was very moving and emotional because I was speaking from the heart. But it also would lead a portion of the audience to going, you know, it's all negative or it's all what not to do. And then I had a mentor of mine who was a professor that would bring me into his classes. And he would pull me aside and say, Mike, I'm taking feedback from the students. They have these little cards. And what I'm noticing is that when you do role play on what to do, they light up. I see it in the room. I see it in their feedback. They light up. And that would change my approach to speaking forever. That was in like my first year or two. And I realized, wait a second, I'm going to try that. And I started playing with that more and more in my presentations. And sure enough, the room was lighting up. And I was getting what they wanted to do after. They wanted to do, not just they were thinking of doing. And that's when the big lesson happened for me, thankfully, earlier in my career. Audiences want to learn what to do. They don't want to be told what not to do. No adult, no child, like some people says, hey, don't do this. right? It feels finger pointing like that versus, hey, well, let's talk about what you're doing. And they bring it out. Well, here's what we do. All right. Does that make sense? And you show them how that doesn't make sense. You don't tell them, you show them, right? And so I always tell people, we are in the show business, not the tell business. And you'd be amazed how many speakers, John, are in the tell business. They get up in front of an audience and they tell them what to do. They tell them everything they're doing wrong. We're in the show. Now, I don't mean show business like Hollywood. We show what to do. We show how that's a dangerous belief to hold on to. So when you show them that their current beliefs don't make sense and could be harmful, they end up doing this. All right, well, what I've been doing is not what I want to do anymore, but what other option is there? That's what's happening in their mind while you're talking. And then you go, oh, well, here's the other option. And you show them that that's actually an easier option and something they can be proud of. It's the wonderful thing to do in life. So you build a program based on what to do. And then people walk out going, I can't wait to do this. Like, I can't wait to try asking. I can't wait to try that one choice for respect in the workplace. I'm so excited to try that. And you see that in post-event evaluations. You just don't see, oh, greatest speaker ever or most interactive ever. You see, I can't wait to change the way I interact with my coworkers. I can't wait to talk to my partner about sex differently going on or intimacy going on. Or we hear from people, this changed my marriage because they reached back out to us afterwards. This changed how I treat myself and partners because they want to do the right thing. Audiences always want to do the right thing. We've got to make sure we're helping them do that.
I've been in those audiences and I've been a participant that said, that's a great idea. Maybe I'll remember it. And some of those ideas, those things that I was shown, I couldn't wait to get out of that room and go apply those. I was a teacher. I wanted to apply those things in my classrooms, in my relationships with other people. And those, you're right, those are the things that make a difference for people. Can you, for our Academy members, can you talk about the idea of show versus tell? Like maybe give us an example, because this would be a great thing for people to think about going forward.
Yeah, here's a great example. Do you bring somebody on stage and have them do the skill you just taught? Because if you don't, you've only told the audience what to do, but they haven't seen it in action. If you are the only one that's ever showing from the stage, which is still valuable, I show from the stage how to do things myself at times, but then I need to bring the audience in at times to see, look, if you think it's just me who's experienced who can do this, let's bring somebody who's never done this before on stage with the skills they just learned and show you what it looks like. And that's the difference. So I'll give you an example. When I'm teaching consent, I've clearly talked about it. I've taught how to ask for a kiss. Then I bring somebody on stage and say, imagine the microphone stand is a person. You're going to ask for a kiss. We'll count to 3. You're going to ask them for a kiss. And when they do this, the audience might be dying laughing, but afterwards you stop and go, could you see yourself doing that to the person on stage with somebody you're all alone with? And almost always they're like, yeah, I could. That was way easier than guessing, wondering if they wanted it or not. I just asked. That actually wasn't nearly as difficult. And then you turn to the audience and say, would that ruin it or make it if your partner looked you in the eye and said, can I kiss you, when you want to kiss them? And the room's almost always like, oh my gosh, once they see it, see, this is the key. Once they see it, they're like, I would love that. I can't wait to try that. I would love my partner to do that for me. If I had just said, hey, would you like to be asked? The audience would be like, some of them would be like, yes. Others would be like, no, I don't think, I think it would ruin it. They need to see it. Once they see it, they can't wait to try.
You know, I've been in your audience and I saw, it was at my high school, kids were clamoring to get up there. They wanted to get up there and participate because, first of all, you have a way of making it, it can be a tough topic, but you have a way of making it really something that people want to learn more about. They were like, yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer. And that's magical. You know.
Well, thank you, John. I remember that day. Absolutely. That's really where I got to meet you, was that day. And here's the other thing that I do. I incentivize my audiences. So I give away shirts. You might remember that. We had the shirts the students could win for volunteering. So anybody who came on stage was walking away with something. And those shirts that I have are very popular and they're appropriate and they're on message and they're fun. So what happens is I have a couch or 2 chairs that I ask to be on stage with the shirts on them. So as soon as the students walk into the room, they're seeing the shirts. And in their mind, they're thinking, how do I win a shirt? How do I win a shirt? How do I win a shirt? So anytime I go to volunteers, they're like, boom, right? Because they realize, wait, that's how you get the shirt. And so anytime you can incentivize your audience, hey, I'm going to reward you for helping me out. That's just a great lesson to take with you for your career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it worked. It was great because we all want that takeaway. Yeah, we all want that takeaway. Mike, what are another couple of things that you might say to someone who's starting out building a speaking business? What's something that is so critical that you can't not do it?
A couple things. One, be you. One of the biggest mistakes that we see in this work is that people watch other speakers and then try to be that speaker. Or they get coaching from speaking coaches, and I'm a speaking coach, so I want to be transparent about this. However, I can tell what coach they worked with because they're literally modeling the exact way the coach talks. And so if you're going to get coaching, if you're going to go see other speakers, which I think you should, as often as possible, to see great approaches to speaking, don't become them. See what parts of what they do fit who you are and draw that more out of you. If you're going to work with a speaking coach, it should be somebody who's figuring out what's the best way to draw you out of that program, not here's how to do the speech and just cookie cutter you into how they do speeches. And you really want to avoid that. So one, find you, be you, right? So you had said, hey, Mike, when I was in that room, you had a way about yourself that made it fun for the students, right? If I started going with how some people would teach me how to talk, I would lose that with students. I would feel robotic and it wouldn't be myself. So really figure out what your approach and your strategy is. It's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. They stop being themselves. They stop just having a natural conversation with the audience. That's one. Another major one is speak now. Don't keep waiting for your speech to be perfect. So Chris Clark Epstein, a legend, iconic, who is no longer with us from NSA, Wisconsin, used to say, only writing is writing. Only writing is writing. Thinking about writing is not writing. Only writing is writing. It's the same with speaking. Only speaking is speaking. You can spend all that time you want practicing and writing the perfect speech. Until you say it, you won't know if any part of that is perfect at all. So get in front of audiences. Those first years, I was going everywhere I could to get in front of audiences. I absolutely spoke for free to build momentum in those early years because nobody knew who I was. Now, I was strategic in where I donated programs because that's how I've always approached it. You're donating a program, you're not speaking for free. There's a big difference in that. All right. And still to this day, I donate a number of programs each year. And so that's of value because I like being able to give back where possible. In the early years, it's also a great way to get more experience. Just get out there and speak, whether it's Rotary or Lions Club, speak. I think that's just so critical.
The first thing you said about being you, in my first several years as a teacher, I was so convinced I had to be like my 8th grade teacher that I kept putting my students, kind of pitting myself against them because I wasn't him and I wasn't authentic. And the point where I started really having fun was the point where I let that all go. And I could be myself and I could have fun with my students and I could be silly or be serious. And they would take that because it was finally authentic. And unfortunately, it took a while to get there because there wasn't somebody saying to me, you should be yourself because you're not. You're trying to be somebody else. That's a really, really powerful message. And I agree with you too. Speaking is speaking. And thinking about it is great because you do have to put some thought into it, but you have to speak. You have to get out there and do it somewhere. Even if you're speaking on a video, it's better than not doing anything at all. So Mike, if you had to start today to build your business, what would you do different or what would you do exactly the same?
Well, what's interesting is I would almost do everything the same about how I built it. That doesn't change based over time, like the approach I'm about to share. And I learned this from an NSA member, Michael Karpovich. I was at my very first convention in 2002. And I was at a session he was giving. He spoke in the education market. And he said, hey, everybody's out there. Imagine that clients are bunnies. Everybody's out there running, trying to catch the bunny. And the bunny's fast and it's hard to catch. Or you could walk into the pet store and you could look for the pregnant one. The pregnant one will give you 5, 10 bunnies, and you don't have to go anywhere. Just make sure you get the pregnant one. And he said, that's what you do when you go to conferences. Go to conferences and trade shows where the audience is full of people who care about what you talk about, and can give that audience alone could bring you 10 opportunities to speak. Not 1, 10, 20, 30 maybe, depending on who's in that audience. Find those places, go there. And that's how you grow your business. And that's what I did for the first 2 years. I went to every conference where the audience cared deeply about my topic. At least a portion of it did. And I did breakout sessions there. And if I could, I'd do a keynote, but it was typically getting breakouts. And then I was very proactive in any session I ever gave. Back then, we didn't have cell phone use the way we did now with smartphones. So everybody, and I might still do this to this day, by the way, I had a little piece of paper that they got on their chair. And they were going to have to hand that piece of paper in to win a prize from me at the end of the session. And on that, it said name, school, email, all that. But I would not have them fill it out until maybe 10 minutes left in the program. Because the last question was, are you interested in bringing Mike to speak at your school? Yes, maybe, no. And they circled it. And then I'd collect them all with 5 minutes left and pick a winner. But what I was doing with the other 299 and the winner's selection, all 3 of them, is I was sending emails out that night, going back to my hotel room and emailing everybody who put yes or maybe. I wasn't, people said, no, I'm honoring that, and said, hey, I had a great time with you joining me in the session today. You expressed you might be interested in bringing me. When would be a good time for me to reach out or to send you in more information about potentially exploring those possibilities? And then I would make sure that once I had their address, which is usually on that form, that by the time they got home, a package would be waiting for them of our information saying, hey, you said you're interested, here's more information. I stayed in touch with them. And I did it respectfully, honoring their boundaries. I would take that approach today if I was getting started, because that's how you build momentum. If people start talking about you, hey, I was at this conference and I saw John Nepper just blow it out of the water, really impacting an audience. Have you seen this yet? And that's when everybody's seeing you together, they're walking around going, did you see that? Did you see that? And the word just starts flying off the charts. And it's how you build momentum. And word of mouth is by far the greatest way to build a business in the speaking industry.
I think what you said too is really key about the day of getting back to your hotel room, sitting down right then and there and sending those out, because then you're still front of mind, you're still present. And then by the time they get home or 2 days later, they're getting another something with your name on it to really keep you present in their minds. I think that's really critical as well.
It is. And so I did a session for NSA convention. This is years ago. And it was called Never Let Them Stop Loving You. And it was this exact formula. Liz actually introduced me for that session. And it was this formula of first day we do this, the 4th day they receive this, the 6th or 7th day, business day, not a week out. That would be too much. Then I'm calling them, right? So there was a plan in place that once they love you, you don't let them stop loving you, right? Stay in touch. And what I explained was, look, I'm in a world of relationships. And if you have a great date with someone and you don't hear from them for a while, you start to get nervous. And you think, am I out of their mind? You might be. So we don't want these people who have the ability to bring us in to spread the word to the world of whatever mission we're on. You don't want them the opportunity to forget you because so much is going on in their life. It's not because you were not memorable. It's that they're overwhelmed with everything else going on in their life. It's your job to stay in touch in that case. So you want to do that without becoming overbearing or reaching out too often. That's why we had an approach that was systematic.
It really sounds like you have a process to reach out, stay in touch. Can you give an estimate of how many people you've spoken to or how many times you've spoken? Just curious, it'd be kind of fun to know.
Yeah. So on average, I speak to 40 to 50,000 people a year. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So if you look, and I've had some larger audiences and situations, but I've also done like Dateline NBC, where I was on a special series they did. So we've reached over 1 million each. I mean, the show alone reached obviously well over 1 million, but live audiences, we've probably reached over the years over 1 million, right around there. And number of presentations, my average year, I'm giving anywhere from 150 to 200 speeches. And I'm speaking typically 80 to 150 5 days a year. So I'm doing 2 speeches a day on average, roughly, if you figure that out. So you put that out over 20 years and somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 speeches.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Mike, we're kind of coming to the end here. Is there one particular moment, person, talk that you gave that really stands out, that really changed you somehow?
Are you saying that I heard, or that I like?
Perhaps an audience, like that, where you spoke, where an audience member came up to you and shared their story because of what you said.
There's been
out of all those speeches you gave.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I'm grateful to answer in saying there's been a lot. There's been a lot where people have come up to me and shared how my program changed their life. Like colleges where they bring me back every year, and the student comes up and says, I was here last year and here's how my life changed. Or I was here 4 years ago and here's how my life changed. I've had people that I've met in the US military who saw me 15 years before change their careers to go into this profession.
Really?
I've had college students who met me change their degree because of my speech and went into this field of work. I have had people who met at my show and ended up getting married and they started by asking first. So there's not one that I can say is more important, because the one that always hits my heart deeply is a survivor who comes up and says, today was the first day I felt strong or courageous. Thank you. That one I get to hear throughout my career, thankfully, and every time it goes straight to my heart. So there are many, I can't name one.
Well, just from what you said, I can tell that your work, that you and your work are really having an impact out in the world. And I want to celebrate you for that. And I want to say thank you for joining me today. This has been very inspirational for me. And I hope that people that watch this are going to walk away with things that they're going to go out and try because of what you said today.
Well, John, I appreciate that. I appreciate you providing this opportunity. You know, I love NSA Wisconsin, and we want to do all we can to support our members and those who are just getting started or have been doing this for 20, 30 years. We want to support everyone.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of 2 Talk Smart. Look for more episodes in the very near future. I'm John Nepper. Let's change the world one conversation at a time.